I'm assuming you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see the screen, can see the slides there, no problem at all.
You go for it,
Perfect.
Shane.
This is always my favorite part. Okay, everyone, welcome to another meeting. This is the AI study group, and as usual, at the beginning of every meeting, we show the Linux Foundation Antitrust Policy Notice. You can read the full policy at the URL on the screen, and if you're from a Linux Foundation member company, please feel free to ask any questions of our counsel, Andy Updegrove. And with that, I hand over to our co-chair of this study group, Matthew Crawford of ARM.
Thanks, Shane. Really appreciate it. As you can see from the title of the agenda, this is going to be the same meeting that we presented for the US Europe time zone on the 23rd of January even. And today I just want to talk about the meeting setup and how we're going to do this study group. But the main part of the meeting will be discussions around what we want to try and get out of this study group and how we can achieve them. So if you want to hear some of the discussion points from the previous meeting, that's available on a recording that Shane sent round. And Shane also produced a haiku of the the antitrust policy. So if you're interested in seeing that, go and listen to that recording. But this AI study group really came out of a conversation from a few people within OpenChain in Bilbao and maybe just before at the Linux Foundation Europe summit last year. And we agreed that OpenChain certainly has succeeded in creating standards for licensing and for security. And with AI being an ever important topic on people's minds, we thought we'd set up this study group to see if we can build trust in the ecosystem between all of our companies around using AI. But to do that, we need to kind of come up with certain goals and work on how we can achieve them. So, like I say, the point of this presentation isn't for me to do a lot of talking, it's to kind of open it up for discussion. So let's move on to the first discussion point. So, this AI study group, as I touched on before, could we agree to establish some form of industry-wide agreement on how we deal with AI, developing principles for building trust within the supply chain? So when my company shares AI generated information to your company, if we're both signed up to the same standard, we know that we're following the same principles. What are those principles? And then there's also the discussion of AI ethics, such as transparency and bias. We want to consider whether we, all agree to the same AI ethics in terms of when we transfer information between our partners. Now, in the last session, when I proposed this topic for discussion, the first point was something that was missing from this slide of, well, what is the scope of what we want to try and reach an agreement on? And I think we're all in agreement that it's around software or open source software between partners, rather than just trying to solve the whole problem for AI management. We would want to be focusing on open source software, and maybe the same principles apply to our proprietary software between companies, but that's kind of the general aim. So I want to open it up for discussion. It'd be great if everyone could come off mute and provide their thoughts and comments. Do you kind of agree with having a study group to establish some industry-wide terms or principles around AI management? What are your thoughts on this? And with that, I will pause and open it up for discussion.
While we're allowing everyone to gather their thoughts, I wanted to flag that we've had quite a few questions in about global synchronization on AI. For instance, in China in December, I was at a couple of events and people were very curious about synchronizing. So it does seem there's an opportunity to build some bridges. And that's just a side note from my end.
Thanks, Shane. I'm certainly hearing partners wanting to, come up with some basic principles on AI management as well. Hence, seeing if we can help out with that as part of OpenChain. So, does anyone want to come off mute and see? Do you agree with this concept of a study group?
I see Alice and Yari are both off mute at the moment.
Yeah, I just jumped off mute. I'm sorry, I missed the very beginning of the meeting because somebody came to the door. Are we talking about management of AI from a compliance point of view?
That was certainly
mainly.
my take on this, but as with all study groups, things may go off in certain directions. So if there is an area of AI management that we think we should cover that's not around compliance, then speak now. But yeah, that was my general take on it.
Oh, cool. Just checking that I understood sort of context. Well, personally, I love studying new things and old things, and I think you know to decide what you want to do with something, having more understanding is always better than less. If it's the perfect solution, I don't know, but I always think doing something takes you closer towards doing the right thing. So I wouldn't necessarily look to worry too much about whether it's the perfect thing right now, but I'm sure it could be a good thing.
Can you expand on your thoughts on what something might be?
Oh, sorry, a reading group or a learning group,
Okay.
or a study group. Sorry.
I see.
Alice, Alice, you went mute. So yeah, the question like this industry-wide agreement, like, can Matthew, maybe you have some ideas like what sort of agreement that would be? I think that's some sort of like voluntary agreement between companies, or how do you see that?
Indeed. So I look to what we've done in the licensing and security areas. We're not saying that all companies have to agree with this. It's we provide a framework, and maybe a standard's too far a stretch at the moment, but we provide a framework, and if people like that framework, they sign up to it like they have done with the other OpenChain standards. So in a hypothetical situation, if this framework said, for good AI management, you will have a policy and you will train your staff on what good is, and we can define what that is, and you agree that anything generated by AI is human verified. If we came up with principles around there, and these are my immediate suggestions, I want to expand it to others. And we came up with that sort of framework, then my company, if we agree, we would sign up to it. Your company, if you agree, you would sign up to it. And then we see that trust, because we have that agreement between us that we are going to this sort of level of compliance and integrity.
Yeah, I guess like bias is one thing, important thing there as well. That the training data, has no bias in it, or well, But
and on the topic of bias, I mean, it would probably be difficult for us to reach a consensus to say there is no bias, but we could say at least we will investigate for bias. If I'm shipping something to you and we agree that we're going to hold ourselves to this standard, we agree that I've at least examined for biases that are relevant to the topic. It could be at that level rather than going right down into the weeds. As has been the previous success with OpenChain agreements.
Yeah, like if you think that, the training data, I don't know how many data points it has, but, having that totally unbiased, I think that's mission impossible, but at least that, somebody's aware that there could be bias in the training data.
And that's where I think training can come in as well. So, we're telling people what biases are, unconscious biases. So people can spot them. But good point. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on this?
My name is Hiro Fukuchi from Sony, and let me confirm, let me clarify the framework. So does the framework cover the workflow of creating developing the AI, or only the workflow for developing the AI, or also include the providing, distributing the AI? Oh.
And that is something our group can define. As a company who will possibly be creating AI tools and also be using AI tools, it would be good to agree on both sides, but I can see companies where they're not going to be generating AI related material, but they will be using tools from others. And as a result, we want to have agreement that when we're using something, it's under the certain agreements.
Okay. So, first point, your first place is to create the framework for the developing AI. Is that correct?
It can be. At this point, we're still working on what the scope is of this group.
Okay, so for example, the distribution of the AI model, for example, the license or some kind of SBOM or other information. Do you intend such such an area?
Again, I'm open to discussion, but I can see that being an output to have an SBOM that I look to the SPDX AI SBOM and their fields, they're talking about the training data set, what has that been trained on, and providing that information to increase transparency. If that's something that we think is valuable to each other and the industry to build that trust, then that's something we can put in there to say, good AI principles would have transparency, and to do that, it could be through an SBOM. I like the idea of could be, because we don't want to enforce too many things, but we're kind of saying, if you want to sign up to this, this is how you could demonstrate that you are being transparent.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, if possible. Alin Jerpelle, also from Sony.
Hi,
so we are talking about defining the goals for this study group, but AI can be in the cloud and can be on the edge. A company can create AI, or a company can consume AI. So I think that the whole study should define either one of those cases or try to split them all.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I think that was picked up elsewhere as well. As I said, certain companies are going to be creating AI models, and others will be, you use a great word, consuming AI information, or equally distributing AI information. So it sounds like there's a number of threads there that we could pick up on when we are kind of defining the agreements there. And each of them will have different concerns. If you're creating a model, you have the power to decide the training data. But if you're just sort of using somebody else's large language model, then that might have different requirements to define as good.
Exactly, that is my concern. And also, once you use something, do you have to trust, or can you get more details, like a detailed SBOM on what has been that trained on, and yeah, basically details about what's going into the whole model that you're consuming.
I think that's a good point. And again, we could start capturing that as a requirement. I do look to a maturity model that is being thought about with the licensing OpenChain standard, where we would set ourselves a minimum to say, you know, we're reviewing it by a human, for example, but a more mature process might be providing training data links in an SBOM. So it could be a spectrum of trust there. But all these are great points that we should be considering.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, just thinking about the GitHub Copilot case that, you know, still I think nobody knows like what's the training data for that, at least outside of GitHub or Microsoft.
And to that point, say we use GitHub Copilot to generate code, and that is then put into a product, that might be a different level of transparency because we don't know the training set for GitHub Copilot. However, if it's you know, a proprietary model that a company is creating, then we do know the training data and it's providing that information there. So again, this kind of is coming out that we should be kind of defining different buckets of use cases and setting ourselves the minimum principles around this.
Yep.
I have a little bit of news which might help on GitHub Copilot. I've gently kidnapped 2 members of the GitHub legal team, and they will be doing a webinar for us on the 13th of March, US time at 5 p.m. Pacific. So I've just put that in the chat, and this will provide, though sadly not in Europe, this will provide an opportunity for people to ask some questions direct to their legal team.
And will that be recorded, Shane?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Right.
yes, indeed. So it will be recorded, and I'm very happy to try to set up a call or to bring them into discussions in this group as well. Perhaps we can ask them as a follow-up to the webinar to drop in on this group at one of the North America European friendly times, so that people in Europe can look at the webinar and formulate some questions and then go back to them.
Thanks for that, Shane. Anyone else? Any comments? I see on the participants list Andrew Katz there. Andrew, I don't know if you were around when I was mentioning a little bit ago about the maturity model. I know you're working on a maturity model. I don't know what your thoughts are on expanding it to other areas.
Yeah, sorry, I was late. I'm in Brussels at the moment, so I'm sort of preparing for FOSDEM and stuff. Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. It's definitely an area that we want to look at. In particular, we're looking very closely at developments of the OSI. There's obviously you know, there's a lot of good work going on over there in terms of defining what AI and open source AI are. But yeah, it is a situation we're monitoring pretty closely, and I think it's you know, quite important that we are going to build that into part of the maturity model.
Thanks, Andrew. So I think just to, I mean, does anyone else have any other comments before I kind of summarize this discussion? So my take on what we've discussed is we like the idea of an AI study group focusing on AI compliance management. There's certainly different use cases of using AI, and that could be either creating an AI model, consuming AI or distributing generative AI. We're mainly focused on open source software in this area. So we should try and come up with principles around maybe these 3 different categories of use cases, and see if we can define what good looks like in these areas. And then maybe later on we could define what, you know, a more mature model looks like in these areas. So it could be we have a basic level of what we define as good to build trust and expand on it. Is everyone kind of in agreement with that?
Sounds great to me.
So moving on then, so this is the last discussion topic I have, and it's kind of maybe a bit shorter. We've kind of defined a bit there of what we think our goals are. It's how we commit to actually doing that. So, you know, we've set up these fortnightly meetings, the Europe-Asia time. We've also got a fortnightly meeting, US-Europe time in the alternative weeks. Do people on this call think this is reasonable time frame? And are you prepared to kind of commit to joining these calls and possibly doing work in the intervening times?
I did have one request. I
Yes.
noticed that, and this is something I missed before, so it's on me. I noticed that the North America Europe calls starting this month will be overlapping the monthly America Europe calls for spec editing. Would it be
Okay.
possible to move North America Europe, which is 4 p.m. UK time? Would it be possible to move it 1 hour earlier or 1 hour later? That's every second Tuesday, if we go ahead with that schedule.
Later, if possible, please.
So
that would 5 p.m. UK time, it would be on the table. But I'm not sure if that works for you, Matthew, because I imagine you might be heading back home at that time.
it's certainly slightly harder for me, but I'm you know, Dave will co-chair that session. So happy to look at those timeframes for the US session, and equally move it a day if we want to move it plus or minus a day as well. So that might also work. So Alan, you raised the point of moving it later. May I ask whereabouts are you based?
I'm based in Sweden,
Okay.
and that is 1 hour later than UK.
Yeah. So I mean, you're more than welcome, of course, to join both sessions. I guess that would make it 6 o'clock your time every other week. Is that preferable for you? Okay. Shane, I think I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I was just saying that any change, different day, different time, it's all fine. I just wanted to flag this so we didn't end up making a meeting lighter than it needed to be. But, Matthew, if you want to get consensus from other parties as well, we don't have to change it right now. But if we could change it by next week so we can let people know, it would be fantastic.
Okay. And I saw a couple of thumbs up for kind of commitment to dial into these meetings and possibly sort of maybe owning some of these areas and starting producing some help with the documentation. Do I see more thumbs up? Thank you, Alice. Thank you, others as well.
You can have one from me, but I don't know how to press thumbs up on the phone.
Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate it. Okay, well, that's all I wanted to get out of today. I think we've got a good agreement that people are happy to progress with this study group and having a look at maybe other areas. I'm going to try and flesh this out and present this next time in a couple of weeks. And then after the discussion next week, we might, I'll be looking for kind of volunteers to see if we can expand some of this discussion with some commitment to maybe producing some or documenting some of the things we're saying. So unless there's anything else, we can end the call here, a slightly shorter meeting, and then we can see you all either next week in the US Europe meeting or in 2 weeks' time for this meeting. Alice, you've raised your hand.
Oh yeah, I just wanted, posted a comment, but I just wanted to know where you all hang out for async. Do you have a Slack or is it somewhere else? I might already
No, this is the first meeting that we have of this, so we haven't even defined a Slack. I see, Shane, you have just published something.
I just put the main Slack in there, but my recommendation, if I may, would be the mailing list might be best, the AI mailing list. So I'll put the AI mailing list into the chat, and it might be the most fruitful place for us to discuss async.
Thanks, Shane. And again, that will help people who are in different time zones as well. Great. Any other comments, thoughts, points? No, thank you again for your time in advance, for your commitment to progressing this. Really do appreciate it. Have a good day, folks, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Matthew. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.